Find a problem that you're in love with, but you really have to be like in love with the problem. And I remember at the time thinking like, how can I be in love with a problem? I can tell you problems that I hate and I cannot stand, but like being in love with a problem is just a very weird concept to me.
That, I imagine, was quite a traumatic event of your life. How do you use it as fuel rather than as something that is like triggering?
Pick that one thing that feels right and focus and go. And well, not go, run. Just like run forward. And I think that's one thing that I really like about Founders, that we all stick together and help each other, because everyone is fighting their own battle. So there's no competition or like competitive spirit whatsoever. It's more like founders against the world. Getting a co-founder is like a business marriage. So my next approach was like, well, there's only one solution to this. We have to drink a bottle of wine together. Fundraising is very similar to dating. It's like, if you're not a match, it's not gonna work out.
Hi guys, I'm really excited for you to listen to this episode. We do touch on a few themes that might be a bit triggering because we talk about assault and harassment on the streets. So if this is something that you've experienced and is something that is personal and painful to you, go check out one of the other episodes and come back to this conversation when you're ready. We'll link some other ones that you will find fun in the bio. Thank you. Incredible. Ina, I'm so happy to have you on today. For anyone who doesn't know you, how would you introduce yourself to someone that you've never met?
Oh, thank you for having me, first of all. Well, for someone I've never met, I would say my name is Ina. I'm originally Bosnian, but I was born and raised in Prague, Czech Republic. And what makes me happy and what I do pretty much every single hour of my day is I run a startup called Enough, which is focused on essentially making women feel safer through small little wearable, a badge. So that's like a little quick overview of who I am, I would say.
That's amazing. And I'm so excited to dive into the journey of building Enough. But I want to talk about your origin story, because this is something that you've spoken about, and it is something that unfortunately a lot of women have either experienced or heard about. And so can you please tell us about why you decided to start Enough?
Yeah, I mean, there's a definitely very personal connection to everything, how it all started. It was almost like, sometimes I look back at it, it was like so many things had to align for it to turn out the way it was. But essentially, I moved to London to do Masters in Entrepreneurship, which is a 1-year crash course of everything startups, like from venture capital to marketing to how to think about growing a startup, how to find an idea. And the first month, the professors really push you to find a problem that you're in love with, but you really have to be like in love with the problem. And I remember at the time thinking like, how can I be in love with a problem? I can tell you problems that I hate and I cannot stand, but like being in love with a problem is just a very weird concept to me. And by the end of the month, we were like, yeah, you have to find that thing. And I was very confused. I was talking to my friends. I was calling up my family. I was like, guys, like, help me figure this out. Like, these are the things that I love to do in life, but they don't feel like they're a problem to me. And sometimes I think things happen in a way that you can't really imagine things aligning. I went on a dinner with a friend, a dinner that I was actually super close of canceling beforehand. And I ended up going at the end. And when I was returning from that dinner, it was in Soho, London, around 10 p.m., safe area, I got surrounded and attacked by 4 men that were trying to take my things. Now, for context, I'm a Bosnian woman. So my natural response was like, well, hell no, we're going to fight. Like, I'm sporty, I'm going to show you, which is like the adrenaline talking in the moment. Obviously, 4 against 1 is not something that is anywhere close to fair battle. So I ended up getting dragged in the middle of the street while fighting for my possessions, them taking everything at the end. And I was just left with injured knees as souvenirs. But when police got there, they told me a couple of things. First, that I was very lucky, which I maybe in the moment didn't realize, because they were like, look, stabbing is huge in London. They were like, you were outnumbered, you were fighting back, like you could have easily been stabbed. So next time, just don't fight. And they were also very treating it like, oh yeah, another case, because they told me that this was their case number. I don't even know which one, that only happened that night on attacks on women. And I was like, so this is like so normalized even for them. So that was like the first like alarming point that I was, this feels super, super wrong. But I feel like the turning moment came when I then shared the story. Obviously, the next week, everyone is asking you what happened. And I was like sharing with all the women, like, what happened? And every single one of them had a story to share back. Half of them way worse than mine. So that was the moment that I was like, okay, like I want to look deeper into this. It's really annoying me from the bottom of my heart. And that's also why I kind of understood what the professors meant by you have to fall in love with the problem, because like I felt so obsessed, quote unquote, in love with how like big and annoying this problem is that I started to look deeper into the solutions. And that's essentially how it all started, and then spend the entire year looking into the space.
That is so beautiful that you like alchemized that really painful and scary moment of your life and turned it into your purpose. I think, again, it's so sad that many women have experienced this kind of thing, or like even if they haven't experienced the like hypervigilance on your walk home is almost something that's part of our pop culture. Like it's almost something that's so normalized that it's like haha hee like message me when you get home safe, but like why? You know? Before we touch on your founder journey, I want to ask, how do you navigate, like, because that I imagine was quite a traumatic event of your life, going back into that incident again and again every day whilst building? Like, how do you use it as fuel rather than as something that is like triggering and painful?
I think what really changed my perspective on it was then that I super quickly realized that I was very, very lucky, because the more I was reading and the more I was like researching the space and the whole problem of lack of safety and all the things that happened. And obviously I think my thing happened in 2021 October, and then I think a year before it was the whole Sarah Ever thing. So like in that perspective, I felt super lucky. I was like, nothing really happened to me. Like I didn't, like it could have been way worse. So that's why it almost like from the first moment felt like a fuel that, because I was lucky, I could just use it as a motivation to make sure that no worse things happen. So it never felt like that super trauma experience to me. But at the same time, like having experienced it and knowing like how powerless you can be when it's just like 4 against 1 and there's nothing you can do, that was just like a super clear reminder that how important it is to create something that would actually make women feel safer, because the reality is just none of us feel safe walking alone at night, and we can have keys between our fingers and we can have someone on the phone, but like when it comes to those situations, those things don't mean anything, and they wouldn't like fundamentally protect you in the moment.
If there's any people watching this who have a problem that they're obsessed with and they want to start doing something to make a change, what would you advise them as the first step? What was the first step that you took?
I think it's just I think that has to be sort of part of like being almost like crazy to a certain extent, because you have to just go, and more like delusional, like you have to go really into the space and like not turn around and not look sideways. Like you have to really go into it. And the more you have like that focus, the more you're going to go deeper and deeper. And then it's just going to be like such a normal thing for you that you're not going to be questioning anything. Because at some point I realized like I just went so deep into the space, and like I was just going forward and like taking new steps and aiming for the next goals, that it was just like at some point I was like, there's no turning back. Like I've invested so much like emotional, physical, everything into this, that there is no turning back. So I think if you find a space that you're passionate about, and you have a gut feeling that this is it, just don't question, because I feel like we are constantly overwhelmed with amount of ideas and the businesses that we can start. But if you find that one thing that just feels right, just go for it, because it's ultimately, I think the success of startups is measured by your determination and how far can you go and how focused for a long period of time can you stay. So the more you get into that like sort of space, the better. So don't get really distracted, I would say, by a lot of different ideas, because we can all do like a million things at the same time, but pick that one thing that feels right and focus and go, and not go, run, just like run forward. That's my core advice.
I love that. And for people who haven't had any formal like entrepreneurship education, because you did your master's, what would you say in terms of like a practical, tangible first step of like you take an idea? Like a lot of people don't know how to start, and they start by like YouTubing like how to start a business or like all this kind of stuff. Do you have any resources that you would recommend from the inside?
I think one thing that helped us the most, and I think can help anyone, especially in those early days, is meeting other founders that are at the same stage as you, because everyone is kind of figuring out it by themselves. There's obviously a lot of resources online, which is great to use, but there's nothing like meeting 5 other entrepreneurs that are similar stage as you in different areas, but maybe are at the time 5 steps ahead or 5 steps behind you, or you're exactly at the same time. So you can bounce ideas, you can see what they're doing, get inspired, and there's a constant feedback loop. And I think that helped us the most early on, because we were first of all in the incubator where there were a lot of other founders. Then we were part of these societies. We were going to events that were startups or founders at the same stage as us. So we were constantly like seeing, hey, like, what are you doing about this? And how are you tackling this? And what do you think we should do that? And then you get, first of all, like insanely motivated when you see how many other people are like pushing for their dreams. And also like people give you great advice. And I feel like that's something that we had to learn super quickly on, that like you should always ask for advice. You should always ask people for opinions, and everyone loves to help out. So if you ask another founder, like, hey, by the way, like, how did you create your first pitch deck? No one is going to tell you, like, I'm not going to show you, or I'm not going to help. Like, we've all been there. And I think that's one thing that I really like about founders, that we all stick together and help each other, because everyone is fighting their own battle. So there's no competition or like competitive spirit whatsoever. It's more like founders against the world. So if you're another founder, everyone is always going to help you. And because it's very personal and relatable for everyone the stage you're in. So they're like, oh, I remember when I didn't know how to put pitch deck together, and that person helped me a lot by telling me, giving me the structure. So like, obviously I want to pass on and like kind of, give back to the founder community. So I think just always ask for advice. Advice is free, and everyone is more than happy to help.
I love that. And I think that I wouldn't have been able to build what I'm building without my mentors and advice as well. But what I do find is that not all advice is relevant. And
So true.
Not all advice is equal,
Yeah.
People are very well intentioned with their advice, but not everyone is knowing your context, knowing the kind of market that you want to work with, the kind of people that you want to help. And so sometimes you get, I don't want to say bad advice, but maybe like irrelevant advice. Yeah. How do you distinguish between the good and the bad advice? Because I'm sure you've had many people like tell you that like, we don't need a badge, like why like that's not going to work. Like, what separates the useful advice and the irrelevant advice for you?
Yeah, I'm so happy that you mentioned this, because there's one thing of asking for advice and getting a lot of advice. That's like the first step. And then the second step is filtering that advice, because the more advice you have, the more data points you have. So then you can have a look and like, okay, this makes sense to me, and like my gut is feeling me this, like telling me this is right. And this advice, just like, I don't even know what they mean, but it's a good data point to have. So like always, there's been a lot of advice that I knew was bad, for example, or thank God I didn't listen. Like I had someone at some point tell me like, you're never going to be able to raise funding for a hardware startup. Hardware is dead. And now what we're seeing is like hardware is everything. Hardware is booming at the time. Like literally OpenAI just bought a hardware company. Like it's going absolutely crazy. So like if I listened to that person at the time and been like, well, maybe I've chosen the wrong industry, like let's just like wrap it up, like I wouldn't be here right now where we at with the team. So it's just, you have to know what sort of like data from the advice you take and that is relevant to you. But that's why it goes back to like, the more you know, the better, and then you can kind of figure it out. And that's like what makes you a founder as well, the ability to filter all that advice that they're giving you and know exactly what's relevant to you at that time with your context that you have, because people giving advice never know as much as you do. So you just have to take pieces for what works for you. And that's definitely an important part. So get a lot of advice and then filter super, super well.
Yeah, 100% agree. I also think a big part of it is learning to self-validate.
Yeah.
Because people talk about how entrepreneurship is lonely. And I think what you said about like making community and having founder friends is a big part of it. But especially if you are a solo founder at the start, it's you and your mission. And you can't explain that when it's super early to lots of random people who don't understand it. And that can be really lonely. And so learning to like self-validate and tell yourself that you are good enough to do what you want to do, you will learn, all this kind of stuff is really important, but it's hard. So do you have any advice on like how you develop this mindset of like, I'm just going to keep running?
Yeah, I think like that goes back to being like a little bit, you have to be a little bit delusional as a founder, but in a healthy way, because there's so many like rational reasons why like this could not work out and this is too difficult, and like maybe, you don't have what it takes in the moment, and like there's so many steps that you have to take and challenges to overcome. But that's what makes founders founders. You have to have that like delusional belief that you got this and you're going to figure it out. And it's almost like to some point in the ignorance to the rest of the world, which is looking at it from very comfortable space and being like, well, you're really sure. You just have to really go and not pay attention. And I think early on, that is one of the hardest parts of being a founder. But once you overcome that, is just going to be, that's the biggest reward as well, because that's what's want to get you where you want to be. So I would just say, like, don't question it. Like, just every time it comes to your head, like, you just like kind of like put it away, that thought. Like, every time it's like, oh, are you sure about this? Then you just like remove it. Like, if you feel that this is what you want and you love it, then you just have to go, and like the challenges are there to be overcome. So that's fine. But you just have to keep going. Like, I think that is honestly the hardest thing. And like, that makes founders, like, it makes them or breaks them. Like, how resilient can they really be, and how the good level of delusional they can be to continue going. Because it's like, sometimes we look at it and we're like, it's not really a fun, like, journey, like walking through a garden sort of journey. Like, you have to be a little bit like ready to, that it's gonna like take you through a lot. So that again goes back to the being delusional, that you're fine with that. You're ready to do whatever it takes to follow the journey.
And speaking about like what you're talking about with like how it's a bit more difficult than it seems, I feel like right now the founder space is really glamorized on social media. So of like, you go to all these events and you fly around the world, and yes, that's a big part of it, but like that's 5%. At least for me, I feel like that's like 1 to 5%. And then the rest of it is like admin and like the mental challenges and the technical issues. So what do you feel are like the biggest stereotypes and myths, and what would you tell people who are thinking of starting, like in terms of the reality of what it is actually to run a business?
I think I totally agree with you that it's very glamorized. Like, it's only like being founder is seen like you have flexible hours. You can work whenever you want. You can travel and work. You work for yourself. You don't have to like report to anyone, and that's all that like the outside world focuses on. But the reality is like all the stress and responsibility lies on you. So you're constantly like trapped in this cage of like, you're never not thinking about the business, and then that like kind of overlaps with your other life, personal life, and it all becomes one thing. So you don't have really much a distinction between work life and your non-work life. Everything is work life. So there are oftentimes that I would have to like, I would go see my friends because I want to still, I'm really like strong on like, I want to keep my friends in my life no matter what. I need to stay sane and talk to people about something else than business. But then I would come home, it would be 2 a.m. and I would open a laptop and I would do the work that I missed out because I went to see them. So it's like constantly trying to balance that. Or I don't know, I would go to a concert that I booked tickets with my friend like months ago, and then we have a deadline the next day. So then I come back from a concert and you're like in this buzz, and I'm working until 5 a.m. to finish something because we have to finish it by the day tomorrow. And there's a lot of like sacrifices as well, like when I would be in conversations and I'm in a conversation with people and we're talking about something like very like daily life, like, I don't know, drama in a life, and I'm just like not there. Like, and I catch myself and I'm like, oh my God, I just like went so like with my thoughts thinking about like, oh, we need to do that. So it really takes a toll on you and like everything else that you're constantly thinking about the business. Then obviously there are times when it's extremely stressful and that can be very paralyzing. And then a lot of like family time you have to sacrifice. So there's a lot of things like health-wise as well. Like, I remember after our first fundraise, I thought I was like managing the stress well, but it was only my body that physically then decided to show me like, hey, Ina, no, like you're not managing well the stress if you think that like you're bluffing yourself. So I remember like the way I looked after the first fundraise, I was like, holy shit, like I look like I was just like run over by a truck. But you don't realize because you're so locked in. You're like so focused on doing what you have to do. You're living on a like really high adrenaline all the time, so you don't see these like effects it has on you. And then again, one big thing is your highs are so high but your lows are so low, and like being able to know that when there's a low there has to be a high again, and like being able to get up from that low, it's that's like the instability that is the part that I think outside world doesn't see. Like, it's not always like founder, like you get, I don't know, we got covered in the magazine, like yay, but then the next we were, for example, not being able to close that deal that we really wanted to. So it's like really up and down, and you just have to be emotionally so strong to like withstand that. So that's the part I feel like the rest, the outside world can't see.
I think a big part of it as well is learning to communicate to the people in your life, like you said about friendships. It's something that I'm learning because this is the first year that I've been running my business, and my life has changed. Like, yes, okay, it looks like I'm not working and like I can be in the podcast studio on like a random Friday, but like it means that the work gets done at a different time. And so learning to say no to people that you really love, and like feeling like a villain, feeling like a bad person because you have to say no, you can't go out as much anymore, you can't do. How did you like communicate with the people in your life to make sure that they came on the journey with you?
I think the one of the things that I realized quickly on is that I can't really even try to explain to them what's going on inside and like the stress I'm feeling, because it's really hard to relate to it if you don't like experience it as well. So the way that works for me the best is just I figured out what makes me stay sane in the work life. Like a lot of people, for example, need gym and they need to really like work out 1 hour, like crazy workouts that keeps them healthy and keeps them like feeling like they have life under control. For me, workouts don't really help because when I'm like working out, all I'm thinking is about business. So I quickly realized that's not what's relaxing me. I still work out, but it's like for me, the creative space to think about all the ideas that we have to do. But what I found that relaxes me the most and kind of keeps me on the ground and like puts me into perspective, not to get too like living in a bubble, is hanging out with friends that have nothing to do with the startup world. And it's my favorite thing ever, because first of all, when they see me, they never ask me like, you know, how's the business going? Like, are you super stressed? It's just all like super normal conversations about like, oh my God, did you hear that? And like, where should we go? New restaurant open. And like, that is what recharges me, because for like an hour or two, it just takes me out of the like insane bubble that we're in. So that's why I understood that there's no point of me trying to explain to my friends like where am I at emotionally and what's going on, but like almost treat it that this is my meditation. This is like what is beautiful about it, that we don't have to talk about the Ina at work, but I'm for them just the Ina. So yeah, I think that's the way I like kind of frame it to myself, and that has been super helpful.
I love that, and I think that touches perfectly onto this next theme, because you're not building enough alone. So tell me a little bit more about your team and how you met your first co-founder, and now you have a second co-founder and your team is growing. So talk me through that journey.
Yeah, so I have two male co-founders, Gaelic and Alex. Gaelic is mostly focused on the hardware, on the product manufacturing, and then Alex is on the software AI side. So we're like three pillars that where enough stands on. And I was very, very lucky with the team that we have, because honestly, I feel like the dynamics that we have, and like also the different skills and different like everyone is good in their like own fields, and it kind of like as a beautiful puzzle matches together. But it started, so I quickly, after the story that I shared with like finding out the problem space and then working a year during my master's to really find what's the solution that we have to build. After I submitted my dissertation, where I had already like, okay, this is what needs to be built, this is what it needs to have, this is what women think about it. All that was ready, and I knew that for the solution was unfortunately very technical. So my background is purely business, and I knew that I needed a technical co-founder to kick this off. So my first approach was like, well, I'm from UCL. Let's start somewhere. Let's start at UCL. Let's look at their engineering department. And I filtered on LinkedIn electrical engineers, and then I put, I think, third year master's. And then because there were so many results, I was like, you know, let's do something random to just narrow it down so I can start from somewhere. I was like, speak Spanish, because I learned as well to speak Spanish. So I was like, this is a good place to start from. And then my co-founder, my current co-founder, was one of the results that popped up. So I like,
how do you filter that?
I somehow have like a recruiter LinkedIn, because I used to have I had an internship in recruitment company when I was, I think, 20 or 21. And I don't think they've ever removed my access.
Wow.
Which I'm not sure if it's still true, and maybe I should not be saying this in camera. But I'm really on good terms with them. So if they see this. I'm like, yeah, well, thanks. It helped me find the co-founder. But I can somehow filter all these things. I don't know if this is like other LinkedIn's have it, but
you have to go old fashioned. Like,
yeah, I literally went like a proper recruiter mode and everything. And I DM'd them. It's just like, hey, I'm working on this. This is the idea, and I'm looking for a technical co-founder. And Gaelic was one of the people that responded. So we had a first meeting, and I remember him having like his hoodie up, and I was just like, I'm not sure about the vibes. Like I can tell that he's very smart, but like I feel like I don't really know him. Like, who is he as a person? And then after we met a few times in person, I was like, I can tell he's smart, but I need to know, like, who is he? Like, what are his values? Like, getting a co-founder is like a business marriage. Like, you have to make sure that they're ready for the crazy journey ahead, and that you can trust them, that you're super, super aligned, and like not getting a right co-founder can make it or break it for the startup. So my next approach was like, well, there's only one solution to this. We have to drink a bottle of wine together. So we went to this wine bar, we got a bottle of red, and I brought this drinking game that I used when I was in my undergrad, where you have these little like cards and questions about your personal life. And my way of thinking was like, it's going to relax him. He's going to feel like this is just a fun little thing. But for me, it's going to be like testing, right? So the question,
green flags and red flags, and what were you looking for?
I was just like, I didn't even know what I was specifically looking for, but I wanted to see if there's going to be anything that I'm going to be like, oh, that's a red flag, or like anything that you can slip with the wine that I'll be like, ooh, like I'm not really sure, like we're aligned on that. But one thing that I remember super well, and that was the major green flag for me, was there was this one question, which was, tell me about a time that you almost got caught by police, like super like typical drinking kind of game question. And he was telling me about this story in South of France when he was younger. Then they were at this house party. The police came. Everyone was running. He was running away. And then at some point he realized that his best friend was missing. He was not running away. So he went back to the house to get his best friend, risking that he's going to get called by police. And that for me was like, that's a team player. That's sort of loyalty I'm looking for. So I remember that being like, yes. And then obviously I found out that he's very close to his family, which like family values and all that are super, super important to me. So that was a big green flag. And yeah, then we started working together. Nice. We worked together for a couple of months. And then just when I thought things were right and things were getting really like, we were moving, we were like really pushing and really like getting a lot of stuff done, he comes to me, and this is December before Christmas break, and he was still finishing his master's, and he's like, Ina, I can't do both. Like, I'm studying full time, and master's in electrical engineering at UCL is a very tough course. And he's also like full time on the startup, and we're like working all the time. And he was like, I cannot do both at the same time. I need to take some time off over the Christmas break, and I need to pick. So now you can imagine the Christmas break that I had. I was like, oh my God, like just when things were going great, he now tells me that he has to make a decision. And obviously I can't tell him what to decide. I had to be like super natural. I was like, take your time, let me know. And the deal was that after first day back from Christmas break, when we're back in London, he's going to tell me. And I'm thinking he's not going to give up university. He isn't, like, because of his parents, like, he's worked super hard. He's like getting super good grades. Like, he's just not going to give up university for this. And like, I'll have to start my co-founder search all over again. So my Christmas break, horrible. But we're first day back in London, and like, I'm obviously waiting for like what he's going to say. And he messages me on WhatsApp, and he's like, hey, Ina, just to tell you, I'm going to a lecture, speak to you later. And I see that, or something, I'm going to a lecture, like something like that. And I see that, I'm like, well, I know what he's decided. If he's going to a lecture, I know exactly what that means. So I just leave it on red, and I'm like, like in a shock. And then 5 minutes after he sees that I read it, he just sends me another message saying to say goodbye to everyone. And I'm like,
what a drama queen.
Yeah, right? And I remember we're like, oh my God. So that was a huge moment for us, because like that was him putting so much skin in the game. And I knew that enough really meant a lot to him. So from there onwards, we were just like crazy focused. And a couple of months after that happened, we get an intern from UCL, Alex, who joins. He was doing masters at the time as well in digital technologies and something, and he joins to help us with the mobile app development. So he's like an intern working a little bit with us, coming to the office time to time, and then we clearly see that he's outperforming. Like he's like doing more than we expected him to do. We end up raising over the summer, and in September it was like a natural step for us to like offer him the first full-time job, like the first employee we would have. We were like, Alex, like, would you want to? And obviously after masters, especially with his computer science background, like you can get any job in the world, like, and you can get a really well-paid job. But he decided to come for like a not the most amazing salary for sure, and join us knowing that like right now might not be the best, like, you know, reward financial, but the long-term vision, he clearly saw that. So he joined us as our first employee, and then we kind of like the dynamic starts creating the three of us. And a couple months after, we go to Uruguay to spend 3 weeks, all the three of us together working from Uruguay. And that really, like, I think that was one of the moments where we realized, like, it is the three of us. Like, everyone has their own departments, and they have to exist for enough to come true. And those were the moments where me and Gaelic were already like, you know, it just started feeling right that it was the three of us. So we then, like literally then over the summer, had a discussion with Gaelic. We're like, we're going to make him a co-founder, right? And we were like, yes, it just feels right. So then we just announced it like yesterday, a few days ago. And it feels only right because he's put a lot of skin in the game as well. And he went for our fundraise, and it just feels right. So we're three co-founders. That was a very long explanation of the team, but we're three co-founders.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you for taking us along the journey. And I feel like it's a testament to you that you were able to communicate your vision in a way that people are like, yeah, we want to drop everything and get on board with this. I don't have a co-founder, but I now have a team, and it makes such a difference. But also in all the entrepreneurship training that I've had, they always talk about how like co-founder dynamics is like the number one reason that startups can fail and blah, 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 blah. And it does not look easy. So do you have any advice on how to maintain healthy relationships with your co-founders, communicate well with each other, and make sure that you're all kind of working towards a shared vision?
I think communication is the key, and realizing like what each person is bringing to the table. Like, it's really never a one person show. Like, everyone has their own different like areas that they're really good at, and like knowing, and like I know exactly what Gaelic is amazing at, and he knows it as well. And then he knows what areas like I'm really like my sort of space, and like having that sort of awareness just helps us create the best of the best together. And also like communicating a lot about how we're feeling, I guess, emotionally, because it can sometimes, like, it's a very emotionally draining journey, and at the same time co-founder is the only person that can understand you and what you're going through, because we're going through exactly the same. So having like that understanding, I think, really brings you closer. And also like putting the egos aside. I think always thinking about what's best for the business. And it's not about like if we're having discussion like what we're going to go for, you have one opinion, I have another. It's not about like who wins. Like, are you going to be right? Am I going to be right? Like, that should never be the case. It's like, what is the right for business? Like, if he comes and gives me the best sort of arguments on like why we should go and like take his approach, and I'm like logically then being like, it kind of makes sense, and I'm not thinking about like, well, then, you know, he wins or whatever, then that's, I think, the key of always putting the business above your personal egos. So yeah, and then that requires work. I don't think any co-foundership is perfect straight away. Like, it's a lot of work as we go along. Like, I feel like our relationship as like co-founders has changed and evolved so much since the day we've met. We've been through a lot of highs and through a lot of lows. These highs bring you together. The lows challenge you in ways that you never thought you could be challenged. So constantly just communicating well, and having understanding that, you know, that we have different perspectives as well, how we see things, but always finding our like way together for enough. I think that's important.
That's amazing. And before we started rolling, we were talking about the whole like, are you guys dating, or which one are you dating conversation, because people always ask, and I think it's just also such a jarring part of like people and being a founder and opinions around that. So what do you have to say around that, and like navigating that side of it, not just like people's opinions, but also like the boundaries and all that kind of stuff too?
I think it's almost like I can't really blame anyone for assuming, because it's just human nature. Like, if you have a female and a male working together, you're always seeing them together. Like, those sort of questions really do come up a lot, and we get often asked. Like, there have been days where I would get asked 7 times a day if I'm dating my co-founder. But at some point it just becomes like very funny to us. So like, I don't think it really gets to us anymore. Like, we know that we're like purely, there's nothing, we're just co-founders. So for us, it's just like whatever people want to assume, they can assume. Whatever people want to ask, they can ask. But the funny part was that when we were raising our first round, it was the investors that were doing the due diligence on us as a company, asking us those questions. Because that's something that I never thought would happen.
A bit inappropriate.
Yeah, but I get at the same time, like, yes, I was like, oh, like, why are they asking? Like, if we were 2 guys, they would just obviously wouldn't ask us. But how, like, I also get why they needed to know, because it could be a huge risk for the business. And if they're investing very early on, they just want to understand all the risks. So there's a part of me that gets it, part of me that I'm still annoyed about the questions that we got asked. But we got asked to the extent like, are you guys dating? And we're like, well, no. And then they were like, but did you ever have anything? Like, did anything ever happen? And I was like, no, what do you mean? Like, this is just so weird. And it caught us out of nowhere as well, because we thought we were having a meeting that is going to be technical. So we prepared all the prototypes. Like, we brought everything. And like, I know Gaelic was practicing all the tech stack that he has. And then they're like, are you guys dating? And then they asked us like about our separate personal lives. And yeah, it was just a very funny experience. But now we're 3, so I feel like we're gonna be able to like have more space so people don't assume straight away that it's just when it's a guy and a girl co-founding that they have to be romantically involved. So yeah.
Speaking of annoying investor comments, the first time you and I chatted, you were also telling me about some of the like microaggressions that you get about being like a female CEO. And this is something that I share with you. I find it hard sometimes to be taken seriously, even though you communicate with authority and you share your mission and all this kind of stuff. People will ask you silly questions. So do you have any advice on how to not let that, one, bother you, and 2, how to communicate in a way to kind of like maneuver around it?
Yeah. I mean, so first, like, it's acceptance that it's going to happen. It's inevitable. I used to get very annoyed when it like happened a few times. And when you see the bias, which oftentimes are not even doing it on purpose, and it's just like almost hidden bias, I used to get very annoyed. But at some point I'm like, I can't really change it. I just have to find ways how to work around it and like how to use it in my benefit. So I was like, well, if this is the situation, then I'm obviously going to burn my 2 male co-founders in front of their face. So then they have to listen to me and take me seriously. And that's worked. But it's, it's just like, it's part of it. I had to accept that they're not doing it on purpose. Well, at least I hope. And then find ways to like just still like have power over the conversation and like use it in my advantage in a way. But yeah, there's been definitely a lot of times that I can think that I just knew that they were like not, like I would take a meeting, for example, by myself, and they would give me very like the empathy card of like, well done, you've got it tucked and you're building a business, like noble, very noble of you, right? And that's the vibes I would get. Then if I bring my co-founder into the meeting, it's more like, oh, that's really cool AI, like this could really get big, and like, the tech that you're building. And I'm like, what? Just like, what has changed? Like, how can it be so different? Or another time I remember, this was in San Francisco, and it was actually our first meeting with an investor in San Francisco. So like, obviously we were kind of nervous, a lot of expectations. And then we got there, and I usually like start the conversation and I'm like kind of leading the questions and stuff. Every time I would ask him a question, the investor would answer looking at the boys and totally ignore my presence. And then obviously like I would ask another question and then he would do it again. And then I'm thinking like, am I intimidating him? Like, am I scary? Or is he just maybe afraid to look other women in the eyes? And I'm like thinking, like, what is it? Maybe he thinks like I'm dating one of them, so he doesn't want to seem like he's making too much eye contact with me. I'm like, at some point, I'm like, just whatever. Like, if I can see he's connecting more with my like male co-founders, fine, let's use it. And then like mention like, oh yeah, I don't know, Alex is super into like NBA, so they can like have a really bonding session and like, like orchestrated in essentially overall benefit for enough, and just unfortunately get over it. But yeah.
I think that's a really important mindset of like a win for enough is a win for you. And so that's really, really interesting. And I want to talk more about the fundraising process, because there's so many statistics out there around like 2% of women get funding for their businesses. Right now it's actually 1.8. So it's getting worse than it was back in 2021, which is, anyways, you managed to fundraise not once, but twice. Can you please walk us through like, what is that process like? It's something that's so gatekept, and I've learned a lot about it this year, but it's still something that I feel like from the outside, a lot of people don't really understand. So what is it like, and what was your experience with it?
I think fundraising it changes you in a ways that you didn't think you can change, and it really like challenges you to the core. Like first fundraise was very, very tough, especially like when you're raising for the first time ever, you don't really know how, and you need to figure out the games, the dynamics that you need to play with investors. But the second time around, we thought we learned all that, and we're like, this is going to be easier, and it's just never easier. Then you discover there's a whole bunch of other challenges. And like both of the fundraisers that we've done, that they were by far the most stressful moments of my life. Like there was always a period when you're like running on so much adrenaline and like on a constant low that you're just like, I don't even remember how the days were like continuing. Like it was just one after another, and you're just like almost like blindly walking straight and hoping that it's going to work out. Because part of fundraise like that I think fundraising really challenges your like resilience to the core, because you have to get a lot of no's to get a yes. Like there's no way you can fundraise with not getting rejected in the middle. So you have to develop the system that you don't care about the rejections, and then they don't mean that your business is not well, but it's that they're not a fit. It's like, again, fundraising is very similar to dating. It's like, if you're not a match, it's not going to work out. Like you can have a nice little conversation, nice little day, but it's not going to work out long term. So you have to go through the process. It's a very much numbers game. You have to talk to a lot of investors and get a lot of no's so you can find that yes. But that can be very like emotionally heavy and draining, and it's just like the constant unknown, like, will we make it? Like, will we manage to fundraise? And it's like very high stakes, obviously, and everything. So both of the fundraisers were also like, one thing that I really like about fundraise is it pushes you to a whole new version of you. Like I feel like I always reinvented myself like 10 times during fundraising process and came out of it like a whole new person. So there's also benefit to it. Like it really challenges you, and it's a tough time, but then looking back at myself before the first fundraise and second fundraise, entirely different person. So it's a balance of both, I would say.
What do you feel has been the biggest change between that version and the version that's sitting in front of me today?
I think, and I hate to say it, but I feel like I had to become more sharky, because you can't raise from big investors, and like it's such a like competitive space. You know how to play the games. It's you have to be hyper confident, and if you're not gonna embody and understand like the how you have to be like play those games and become a shark as well, they're just gonna eat you alive. So you have to be ready to be the bigger shark. And before the first fundraise, we were very much like very innocent, very naive. We like approach the fundraise like, hey, we're building this thing and we really want to make the world a better place for women to feel safer. Like, would you want to support us and invest? Like that was our approach. I quickly realized that's not how it's gonna work, and no one cared. But then the moment you're like, hey, like we have this opportunity, like you're in or you're out. And then you change the dynamic and you act like you couldn't care less if they come in. And it's you're doing them a favor to giving them space in your like mission and fundraise, and like really believing that this is going to be big and they have an option now out of all the people to take part in the journey. That's the mindset that they love. And that's the mindset that hooks them in. And like you have to really be super careless. Like it's very much the less you care, the more they want you, which again goes back to like same, like dating and fundraising is so similar. Sometimes I find it so scary how similar it is. It's like, it's also like if investor is not responding super quickly to you and you're chasing them, like it's not going to work out. because if they wanted to, they would. Same as in dating again. Wow. Like if they really want, they're gonna be back and like emailing you and chasing you and be like, hey, like we really want to have a space in the round, da 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 da. And then you have to act like you don't care, but give them a little bit of snippets, and like it's exactly the same. So you just have to become a shark. You have to become very careless, and you have to become very direct, and tell them what you want, and like make them feel like, you know, they don't have it granted that they're going to be investing.
I love this metaphor of dating and fundraising. I've never heard it. I think it's so funny, but like from what I've seen of like a lot of my founder friends, it's so true. If we're taking this metaphor a bit further, if someone was dating online and had a profile, like obviously like that's like a snapshot of like who they are. Mm-hmm. What can a founder do in like terms of proving traction and visibility and talking about their company in the same way? They don't have a profile, but you have like a data room, and you have like a pitch deck, and you have all of these different things. So what advice do you have of like tidying up the profile to make sure that it gets the right matches?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's sort of a mixed response as well, because there is one part that you should be super prepared for the fundraise, and everything materials-wise has to be polished. But also there's a side that the more scrappy and not polished it is, it gives the vibe that you're just so busy building that you don't care about these little things, and it almost makes them feel like, well, you want it or not. So for example, thing that we changed a lot during our fundraise is initially we thought like the more materials we give, the better. It shows that we're so prepared and they have a lot to look at. That was the start of the fundraise. Towards the end, we were not even sending a deck. We were just sending a one-liner, like, this is where we are. You want to talk to us or not? And that's where you get. And we can only give you pitch deck once you call with us. And it entirely changed. So like, but we still had all the materials ready, but it's also like giving them, like making them earn the access to your materials and earn access to talk to you. So it's just and this is hard. Like the mindset shift is really hard when you need to fundraise and you need the money to continue growing your business, but you have to act like you don't need them the entire time and give them like these little bits of like, you know, crumbs of information so they come for more. But I think the best preparation is to just mentally be ready for a crazy journey. And also like before fundraise, like network is the most important thing. Like you having a lot of people that can help you with introductions, because everything in fundraise works through introductions. You can't cold email investors. It's just knowing that, you know, you're going to have to like really tap into all the aspects of your network. I think that's really important. So that's something that you can work on prior to going into full fundraising mode.
Awesome. And you just completed your second round. So what is different between like the first and the second, and tell us a little bit more about the second round?
Yeah, so first round was £240,000 that we raised a year ago. That was a small round. It was a predominantly angel round that was led by a VC, but a small European VC. And yeah, that was like what gave us sort of the runway to develop the prototypes and really move forward and hire the first employee, Alex, and have some like sort of resources that we can really work with. The second round, we raised $2.6 million US, and we raised it in the US, in America, in Silicon Valley, because obviously as every startup does these days. And it's definitely very much different because our investors are now really big investors. Our lead investor is A-Star Ventures. They've invested previously in the likes of Airbnb, Uber, I think Pinterest as well. So they're like really experienced and they've seen a lot, and like we're first of all very happy to have them on board. And they also like super quickly saw the big vision and the big mission, and that's what we liked so much about them. And then the rest was just as well some incredible GPs and some funds, some other as well VCs. So it was all came together nicely, but there was definitely a lot of suffering beforehand. But yeah, we're very happy with this round. So now we can really, really grow faster.
That's amazing. Congratulations. What is on the horizon? Like, what can people look forward to? What are we going to see from Ina now that you have this new?
Yeah, the number one thing, which I think everyone is waiting for, the launch of the badges. So this round is the resources are going to allow us to really like push the products to so we can manufacture it and essentially launch the badges into public, do a lot of testing, and people can actually hold the product in their hands, which we're very excited for. And we're definitely going to be sharing a lot of the journey as well, because there's a lot of happening, and we want to stay close to our followers, our people that are going to be, our customers, and we just want to show them everything that is happening behind the scenes. So there's definitely going to be that aspect that we're going to be very public facing, sharing the behind the scenes, and doing everything that we can deliver a product that makes people feel safer. They love the product and they want to continue using it and tell everyone about all their friends about it. So that's our overall goal with this round. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm going to link everything down below, but where can people find you and stage?
Yes. So based on the needs, they can find us on a website, which is most likely going to be inobadge.com. And if they want to follow the behind the scenes journey, they can find me on Instagram under Ina lower dash, is that how we call it?
Yeah.
Lower dash founder, for all the content, what's happening, how we're building. And then obviously connect with me on LinkedIn on Ina Jovicic. Yeah.
Since we're rebranding this podcast to Reclaiming Bossy, I want to finish by asking you if you have ever been called bossy, what it means for you, and are you reclaiming it? What does the word girl boss mean to you? How are you feeling about that?
I've definitely been called bossy before. But I think it's also in my case, it might be a bit extreme because I'm also Balkan and Eastern European, and the stereotype for Balkan and Eastern European, where we can be tough when we want to, we can be very bubbly and fun and princessy, but when it comes to it, we'll set the house on fire if it needs to be. And I kind of like to tap into that in my business persona, and I think it helps me a lot. So I've definitely been called bossy, but it's also at this point I really I so don't care. So whenever people have opinions, or would they call me bossy or opinionated, I really don't care. And I think that's also beautiful space to be in. I really recommend. Obviously it didn't happen overnight. I think that journey kind of got to me to the point that I'm just I know what I want, I know what I'm coming for, and I will get what I want. So it's just you call me whatever you want on the journey. That's your own insecurity, or you're projecting something that is yours, but it just for me is whatever. Bye. So I think that's the best approach, and it's just I don't see it as negative as well. And it's I'm happy that you're calling me bossy and not whiny or shy or something. So
that's beautiful. I've learned so much from you today, and I'm so excited for the next phase of Enough. We're all going to follow along. Thank you so much for your time. You truly are an incredible and empowering woman.
Thank you for having me. This was actually a lot of fun. I love this podcast. Thank you.
Yeah.